Excellent.
The picture is also more or less clear. Let's try it out.
Now it's better?
Yeah.
Great. So let's start. Do you have any recording equipment on your side that you need to start? Or
it's already started.
I want to see if I can make it on air. But,
can you hear me well?
No. Yeah, I can hear well. Does everybody hear?
No, you. Yeah, you need to make it on air when you're inviting me.
All right, 1 second then. Come on. Huh? Yeah, here it is.
Okay.
Yes.
So now you can hear me?
Yep.
Excellent. And it's on air, so it's fine.
Yes, it works.
Excellent. Great. So thank you very much for coming. And my name is Ido Green, and I'm developer advocate for Google, focusing on Chrome, HTML5, in our cloud platforms. And today we'll try to go over some new, interesting, exciting things in HTML5. And hopefully we'll have time, 5 to 10 minutes, to have an interesting Q&A session in the end. I always find it the most interesting part of the talk. So I'll try to go over the slide quite quickly, but feel free, if you want, just to stop me or ask questions during the slides. Through the Hangout, it's quite easy to do so. So let me try and share with you my screen and quickly switch here. Okay, good. Can you see the fonts well?
Sort of. It would be good if we could make it full screen, but I'm not sure that Google Hangouts has this kind of feature yet.
Make browser full screen.
Yeah, is it better right now?
It looks bigger.
Great. I can make it even a bit bigger.
Okay.
All right. So if one of you would like to follow up with question, feedback after the talk, just feel free. I'm using these days both Google Plus and Twitter and over my blog. So just feel free.
Oh no.
Expression, this space expression on developers that really astonished from what we could do today on the web. So we'll try to go quickly and see how first we're defining modern web apps. And then probably the vast majority of the time we'll devote to check out what are the Power APIs and new tools that we have today that we could leverage and use in our websites and web app and mobile web apps. I'll try here and there just to expose some of the new exciting things that we have in Chrome DevTools, but that won't be the focus of the talk. So basically, when we're speaking today about modern web apps, dynamic sites that you're spending the vast majority of your day in them, think about Gmail or things similar to that, we're basically taking two main components. It's the power of HTML5 and the new APIs, and what users are regular to have, and that's basically the native or desktop experience. When we're combining both of them, we're getting modern web apps or great web apps. Here are some if you go to chrome.angrybirds.com, you'll be able to see it. And Hipmoc, which is a vertical search engine for travel, is another great example. Some of the main things that we have with these. By the way, if you could put mute on your side, it will make the audio quality better.
Yeah, 1 second. Are you showing the slides also right now?
Oh, you can't see the slides?
Yeah. It's yeah.
That's a big problem.
Can you show?
Let me take the slides again. Can you see them now?
Yes. Yeah, now it's good.
You should be able to see the slides now.
We see.
Can you see them?
Yeah, we see. Yeah, you can continue.
Excellent. It's good that you told me. So let me just get real quick to the other slides. So first, here are some links. By the way, if one of you want to follow up while I'm giving the talk, you could probably go right here. So this is the short link. It's GOO.GL, it's Google short link. And then 49, capital C, capital J, F. So that will give you basically the slides so you could go over them with me. And this is basically just one little tip. You can do today some things interesting like that in console log, where you could basically give it CSS style. So that's just something small. Okay, so let's close the dev tool for now. So you could probably give me feedback and follow up if you would like on G+, Twitter, or my blog. This is the expression that I see on developers. The agenda we cover and what is modern web app. Here are some bold examples. So we covered Gmail Offline, New York Times, Angry Birds. All of them are coming with a methodology of offline first. And by that I mean that from the ground up, the developers thought about how to make this app working when there's no connection or where there's a flaky connection. So the app got a very interesting sync layer that gives the impression and improve the performance. And basically the user can be productive and work with the apps even when there's no connection at all. One thing that we see common in all the modern web apps is that when we're shifting more and more knowledge and code to the client side, we need to make sure that we're avoiding the spaghetti code that usually happens. And one of the best ways today, and that's probably the main reason why we see MVC and MV star frameworks flourishing on the JavaScript client side ways, is that we just want to make a clear separation between our data and the views. And I'll give some bold example afterwards. We want our apps to be device aware. As you all know, mobile is flourishing, and user will go to our web apps and websites from mobile devices. And to leverage the real estate that the device itself is giving it. 60 frames per second, basically I think this is one of the most important things that we see in most of the modern web apps, is that users are really care about performance, and great web apps are making sure that everything works smoothly, and we're giving performance that the user really can't tell if it's pure native apps or web app. Some of the bold client-side framework that we see today are here, and that's nothing too official, it's just my point of view of things. Let's start from the bottom. Ember.js is probably one of the interesting ones that Yuda Katz and Tom Dale are working on. It started as Sprat Core, which was the foundation of what Apple is using on the client side, and basically the code today is very far from there. But it's called the Ruby on Rails of the client side by some. And I think the main interesting things there is that they took convention over configuration, and they took some smart decisions for you. Now, if it's working for your needs, that's probably a very good choice, and it's very ambitious. So if you're thinking about building a web app that the user will spend long hours in, they did some very interesting things in terms of memory management, two-way bindings, and other interesting stuff. Backbone.js is on the other side of the scale, a very slim, very popular framework, I think by far the most popular framework. And one of the things that make it so popular is the short learning curve, very steep learning curve. So quite quickly you could be efficient with it. If you have a mobile web app today or a web app that got some separation between the data and the view, probably you could use Backbone quite quickly. AngularJS is one of my favorites these days. It started as a project in Google, and luckily for the development community, it's now open source. And they took a very interesting, different approach. It's an approach that coming and saying, hey, we have the markup, HTML. It started in the 90s where all the sites were static. Today we have dynamic sites and web apps. Let's have a look at what HTML will look like when we want to achieve dynamic aspects of the sites and the apps. And Angular is basically giving you a very nice way to extend the markup and create some very powerful things. It's also a framework that came with a background of Java guys, so it has dependency injection and test-driven development from the start. Some very, very interesting things. I really encourage you to check it out. Of course, that's one of the aspects that in the end of the day, you do want a strong server side. And for that, I really encourage you to check out Google Cloud Endpoints. It's a new service that Google announced in the last I/O 6 months ago, which basically leverage Google App Engine power and giving you a strong way to create an API that basically you can consume from any other technology. It could be a web app, it could be Android, it could be anything that you'd like. A very nice, quick and easy and maintainable way to write your API. And why we need offline? Well, there's lots of good reasons. I put here as first and foremost better performance. I think this is one of the major aspects that you're achieving when you're building your apps from ground up or from bottom to top with the offline in mind. How you can achieve offline today? Well, that's also quite good question. And luckily for us today, we have all the building blocks in place. So we have app cache to save our index HTML, JavaScript, CSS files, and even images and MP3 files and any other resources that we need. And then we have to saving state and data, local storage, which is common on all the modern browsers, and IndexedDB, which is the new NoSQL database on the client side, and even files APIs. So in HTML5, we could really work with files. That's giving us lots of powers, and usually I think the main challenge is not to save assets and data locally, is more of how we're making this sync layer working as we want it and making the right decision at the right time. Usually this one line of code will tell you when you are offline or online, so you could make the right decision and make sure that you are giving the user the ability to work perfectly even when there's no connection, and then running your sync layer when you have connection with the server again. Now let's go and start to go over some of the. So first, actually, it's not part of HTML5 or of CSS3, and that's probably coming to solve the old traditional ways that we used to place content on our pages. At the early days, it was absolute position, which basically, when we have so many devices, doesn't work at all. And then we started with some relative positioning and other stuff. And luckily, in 2012, we see a flourishing in W3C. Lots of new specs that are coming actually to give us front-end developers the holy grail that we want to achieve, and that's some nice, flexible way to lay out our components and make them dynamic as the screen are changing. Two that I really encourage you to check out are Grid Layout and Flexbox. The new one, by the way. There's an old one that is already deprecated. Why Flexbox is so awesome? Well, probably because it's giving us the ability to achieve that. And not only to achieve that, but to communicate to the browser exactly what we want it to do. And moreover, it's giving us a clear separation between the markup itself and how we will see it and how the user will see it when we work with it. So you could see here, by the way, I'm using prefixes because as you all know, browser vendors are implemented quite quickly and Chrome is definitely the leader here. And Mozilla and Firefox are doing a great job as well. And usually we're using this prefix, and then when the spec will be in place and all browser will achieve it, we could use it without the prefix. Here in this example, you could see that I have 3 components, and see how easy it is to just make them separate or make sure that they are aligned or stretch. Simple things that anyone that works with CSS will know to appreciate, that in 3 lines of CSS, I'm achieving it. And as you all know, we're reading code much more frequently than we're writing it, so less code is always better. Here is another great example where I basically have this nice separation, and in this place, I'm telling the flexbox to go to the second child here, in our case is the P component, and change the order. So let's say that in this case, I want it to be after the 1, you could see the C and the B just flipping places. Of course, the HTML will stay the same. I could always change it from a row to column because the user switches phone or something like that. Very, very nice intuitive way to lay out your main components. Other cool things is just to make sure that columns are the same height. And as you all know, these slides are HTML5 one page, so you could just view the source and see exactly how it's been done. Another great thing is to make certain components, like our main component of the article, let's say, bigger or we communicate to the browser exactly what we want to achieve without any hacks. This demo, which if you go, you'll see, basically giving you a great way just to have a framework that you could use and leverage in your web apps. Let's go back to the slides. Which browser supports it? Well, it's Chrome, Safari, and IE10. Another very cool new feature is dynamic CSS. So basically what you could see here is that I'm calculating what will be the width and the height, and that's how I'm achieving those nice circles. And when I'm hover on them, I'm basically closing the border radius, and I'm getting this nice effect. So without using less or SAS or any other frameworks that giving you the ability to work with calculation, functions, and variables in CSS, I'm able to achieve it. And the nice thing is that, except from Opera, all the modern browsers are supported.
That's the longest one.
No, it wasn't longer before.
You should stop out the mic. Yeah.
А, у меня вот презентация. Это его презентажка. Я в том не знаю, интересно работает с нами. Ты сказал, что нет. Такую фигню же можно просто сделать.
Я вас не понял, мы спать, что угодно. Есть фишка в том, что у тебя...
Can you hear me, guys?
Yeah, we lost it for like minutes.
Okay, let me try to share the screen again.
I'll turn our camera off, so maybe it's better.
Less traffic.
Yeah, sure, yeah, smart move. Can you see the screen well?
Yes.
Excellent.
Okay, yeah, got it.
Yeah, it's here, okay. Let's see that you can see the right screen.
It's not the screen right now.
Yeah. Now I put it.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Great. So let's go quickly to the slide that we were. Okay, so data binding, we show the Angular example. This is the plain vanilla JavaScript example. That basically the only...
We didn't see the...
Sorry, can you hear me?
Hello, we didn't see the Angular example actually. Where you had the ski.
Ah, okay.
Around there, yeah.
Okay. Now you see the Angular example?
Yeah, now we see it. You can
Excellent. So,
go one slide back. Okay.
sure. So basically data binding is of course something very crucial to web apps. You want to save some data. And in the old days, like I will show in the next slide, we use the data attribute in order to save state of data. I just choose here to show you Angular because it's so self-explanatory that it's nice to see how we're achieving it with those 4 lines, maybe 3 lines. Basically, we're taking this div component and declaring it as an Angular app. And then we're showing Angular what will be our model. In our case, it will be this nice slider. And then the view. And Angular is doing for us the one-way data binding. When I'm moving the slider, you can see how easy it is to just bind one data to the other with Angular. Of course, you don't need Angular, you don't need any framework to achieve it. You could use plain vanilla JavaScript, and in this case, you could see that I'm adding to the input just an event listener, and basically on the change event, I'm just putting the value to the dataset. And here what I'll do, I'll just use the attribute in CSS to make sure that it will bind it. Another very cool way is just to use data list. It's supported on all browsers. And basically you could see here that I achieved the poor man autocomplete. And when I'm clicking on something, I can see that I have the list here. And you could use this feature today in your sites or apps. As I mentioned, it's available on all modern browsers. Multi-thread programs. Well, basically multi-thread programs is something that is dear to my heart. It was so dear to my heart that I invested the time and effort and wrote a book about it with O'Reilly on web workers. And web workers basically giving you the ability to take out the old paradigm shift of just using the main thread loop that you have in the browser and spawning new threads. So in any case that you have a big calculation to make or something that might interfere with the smoothness and the performance of your app, I highly encourage you to just spawn a worker, do the heavy lifting there, and then communicate back to the main page. Here you can see how easy it is to do. It's very, very simple API. I'm declaring the worker. This is the constructor, giving it basically a JavaScript, that, a script, a different file that I want to run the computation code. And then I'm attaching an event listener, so I'll have a way with post message to communicate back and forth with the worker. In the worker itself, of course, I have a limited world. I can't just access the DOM or do other things. But I do have the ability to work with JSONP and import script and import data from external sources. And of course, communicate the data and the results back to the parent page. Some of the new things that you could do today with web workers, of course, to use shared workers, and then all the instances of your app, let's say it's multiple tabs or windows, will share the same resource. It's a great way to have one source of truth of communication with, let's say, the server or local database. How to debug, and I think that was one of the main challenges. That's why lots of developers are not using it, was that it was really hard to debug it. Today, luckily, with the Chrome DevTools, you just need to click on this checkbox when you're opening DevTools, and you are able to debug workers. And of course, all my examples in the book are free on GitHub, so just feel free to take them and leverage them. How to find out when you do have the ability to use web workers, how do you do this feature detection? I highly encourage each and every one of you to check Modernizer. If you don't know it, Paul Irish and some other extremely strong guys wrote it as an open source project. They do feature detection for you on the client side. It's also on GitHub, and basically the link is here. Access file system. So I'll go over it quite quickly. Basically, if you didn't know, you have today a full-blown ability to work with files and folders from your browser. I'm not talking about the files that are on your local disk, just anywhere on your local disk. I'm speaking about the sandbox under the browser, of course. And in terms of security, the files are bound per origin, so it's the protocol, the domain, and even the port. But think of the capabilities. You could basically do dynamic caching of images, assets, very sophisticated things. Specifically, if you're using game or you need some way to do asset manager, the file API today is basically allowing you to do all that. Here we have a nice example of how you're caching a remote image file. You see lots of nested and lots of backcalls. And basically, or luckily for us, although we have those huge amount of backcalls that we need to do, Eric Bidelman, my colleague from Chrome DevRel, did this nice open source project also on GitHub that basically giving you the ability to work with files like you're working with files on Unix. So you could see here that after you call the constructor and init it, you could do things like ls or cp. It's a very nice and convenient way to work with it. This is a demo that I won't show right now, but it's basically giving you the ability to drag and drop folders from your directory to the browser and work with them. Very, very cool. And yeah, the one big complaint was it's only on Chrome. Well, it's not. It's also on Firefox and IE10. And that's thanks to a shim that Eric and friends wrote. Very powerful one. Server slot downloads. That's one of the nice things or let's say a synthetic sugar that you could put today in your web apps. In the old days, when we wanted the user to download, we need to do content disposition from the server, and then the browser knew to open a new tab or window and then create the download. Today, all we need to do is just add this attribute of download, and once the user will click it, the download will happen immediately. Here is another great demo. You could give the user any way of inputting text or any other things, and then immediately create a file to download it. This is the code that does the demo, but because we're shorting on time, I'll just go over it real quickly. Efficiency data transfer. So the main challenge with web workers was that in the end of the day, when we're using the post message API, we're binding it, and in the early days, it was binding just to string. So we use some hacks like Stringify to be able to work with the JavaScript object. And afterwards, when we communicate with workers, we use things like that where we were able to work with JSON. And luckily for us, we have much more freedom in these days when we're working with blob and array buffer or files just to work with raw binary data. When we use binary data, you could see how quickly we could jump from several Ks to several megabytes. And that's actually something that is very inefficient. Because at the end of the day, if we have, let's say, 20 megabytes that we want to pass to the worker and get back the results, if we're doing a copy command each time, it won't be better. And luckily, yeah, we could do better, we could do much better. And in Chrome, we have today what we call transferable object. So if you use the good old post message and just add this array buffer attribute in the end, basically you'll get a shallow copy, or how should I put it, a move and not a copy. And that structure will be cloned, and basically it will be just a pointer and not everything that is copied now to a new block of memory. And it's giving us 50 times faster performances. You can see here it's a very nice demo that basically taking 32 megs and passing it back and forth to the worker. And you can see here that I'm having around 4 to 5 milliseconds. If you run this exact demo in any other browser, you'll see it's jumping to 300 milliseconds and above. The feature detection is not easy, but luckily this snippet will do the work for you. So if you're deciding to use it, this is the way to do a feature detection these days. It's only available in Chrome today. Access native hardware. So lots of web developers are not aware that they could do lots of things and communicate with native. When I'm calling native, basically it's a device API, and all the specs are under this. Today, and actually it's not that new, but we have a geolocation API, we have device orientation, WebGL on the GPU, file system that we saw, to see when we have connection, battery API, so we'll make things more efficient when the battery is low, gamepad API, so we could communicate through USB and Bluetooth, and of course, WebRTC, which basically giving you an entry and control on the video audio from the browser. So think of creating a new Skype without any need to install Flash, Java, or any other plugin. Let me just show you real quick how nice DevTool is supporting it today. So if you're opening DevTool and you're going to the lower right button and click on it on setting, you can see here overrides. And basically, by the way, I'm working here with Canary, Chrome Canary, which you could basically install alongside the stable version. It's giving you a few things that you could override. So you could override the user agent. Let's say that I want to mimic Android. And immediately you'll see that it's not only that it's mimicking the user agent, it gave me the right device metrics. So I could see how easy it is to see my slides on any other devices. Very, very quick and easy way to check it. Let's see how it does look on iPad or any other things. It's not only that, but with the Geo API, I can override my geolocation and give it any latitude, longitude that I want to do. Moreover, I could override the device orientation. So you could see that I basically could play a lot with DevTools and see exactly how things will work. Last but not least, I could emulate touch event. So if I'm listening and using touch events, I could just emulate it directly from here. I want it to run anything else. Okay, one of the things, so the new, it's not that new, but it's showing us where it's going. It's better control on the audio from the browser, and you could use it on WebKit. So basically, Safari and Chrome will support it. Let's give it a short try. New York. So basically, you could see how easy it is to bind voice control to your web apps. It's not working all the times, I agree, but the nice thing that the API is giving you the confidence level, so you could take a smart decision when you want to really activate it or when not. WebRTC, it's a full-blown topic that hopefully we'll have time to cover it on some other occasion that we'll meet. Here I'll just give you a short hint of what or how powerful it is.